we can start with Kobe Buffkin. I think from all accounts, from what I've read and some of these videos that I watch, like Kobe, so 19-year-old guard
Mhm.
from Michigan, to me is like a high basketball IQ player, and has a lot of versatility to his game. And um, I guess for some of these guys too, with Keontae too, and you would put Jalen Hood-Schifino there, like Kobe Buffkin doesn't strike me as a guy that's gonna be a couple of years for him to develop type, right? Like I don't think
Mm.
he's gonna be able to come in if you're thinking about a Raptors team that's looking to slot in a player right away if he can make it to the rotation. Like I feel like there might be some questions there, but I think of the guys that we've talked about, it seems like he might have the highest upside.
Yeah, I really like Kobe Buffkin. But he really came on strong with the course of the year. I think that seems like for a lot of scouts that I've sort of spoken to in the course of sort of preparing for this draft, like that is something that people value, right? The idea that you can showcase improvement. One thing else that I think it's just a sign that obviously there's more to your game, and we were able to see that with Kobe this year. Um, for a guard, pretty crafty in terms of the way he's able to get to his spots. Lefty, he's able to finish really efficiently at the basket, which at the college level is obviously going to be very different from at the pro level. But at the same time, to see a guard shoot close to 70% at the rim in any context is very, very good. And I think when you watch some of the film on it, he's really able to sort of use a variety of finishes at the basket. There's a level of craft that goes into it because it's not like he's just dunking on everybody and shooting 70% at the rim. He's not really doing that much, but he does have a variety of finishes. And I think that, yeah, I mean, he gets after it on defense. He was sort of like their go-to perimeter defender. And yeah, I mean, again, I think those are good tools, good size for a guard as well. I think there's probably, just with all these guys, all three of these that we're going to mention today, there's going to be some concern as to whether or not they can play point full time. Obviously, to play point in the league, not only do you need to have good handles and the ability to pass and get some good court vision and good judgment, but also you're going to need to be able to score. Like all the successful point guards in the league nowadays are ones who put a lot of pressure in terms of their own scoring, whether that's through the pull up three or maybe even mid range pull up, but definitely getting to the rim as well. And I'm pretty confident a guy like Kobe can get to the rim. I think he should display some mid-range ability, but there's a question as to can he shoot that three at a consistent level. So, but I do think that you mentioning that with all of these guys is the same kind of deal, right? Like I don't know, expecting them to jump into the rotation immediately, even with the Raptors having real weaknesses at guard as is going to be difficult to see. However, I do think that 1 or 2 years down the line, like these guys can all be contributors at the NBA level.
Yeah, and in comparison, like, what can you tell listeners about Jalen Hood Shafino, like compared to Kobe Buffkin?
Yeah, I mean, it's another similar guard in terms of kind of a combo guard who can really score. He also took on some, significant defensive responsibilities as well, based on my research. But at the same time, I think Kobe probably did it a little bit more. Another pick and roll playmaker, seems to really, really have a good mid range pull up. Again, the question is, can he shoot it out to three? There are some inconsistencies on that front, whether or not he can extend his range. But definitely is a pretty crafty pick and roll player. Is definitely able to make a lot of really great passes out of the pick and roll. His reads are pretty good. The mid range pull up seemed to be the shot that he went to a lot. But at the same time, I think there is definitely talent there, in terms of as a player who can be effective with the ball in his hands. The question is, can he be effective without the ball in his hands? And again, it's like that for all of these guards, right? Because, especially, in today's NBA, if you're going to be a guard, you absolutely need to have a three. And for all these guys, that is a bit of a question. But I mean, based on how he shoots in the mid range, he looks really smooth. He looks really effective. Even if it's not like he's spotting up in the mid range, he's pulling up in the mid range. He's got good craft to get those shots off. So I don't necessarily see why that touch wouldn't extend out, but that is sort of an assumption.
What about Keontae George, the 19-year-old?
Yeah, Keontae, at the start of this, that was the guy that I was really curious about because I was seeing a lot of mock drafts and he was available in that range. And that's somebody, like I mentioned earlier, that we were able to see in person. He's just kind of a pure scorer. And I'm less worried about his three-point shooting, even though his three-point percentages weren't the strongest in college. That we're talking about low 30s in terms of percentages. But when you watch the tape of it, he clearly is a guy who can really fill it up, and he's very aggressive with his jumper. He gets to it in a variety of ways. I think he is definitely a very aggressive player. I question more in terms of how his playmaking is going to fare. I think in college he averaged pretty much the same in terms of assists and also turnovers. And so, you don't want to see that from a lead playmaker. You definitely want to see a much higher assist to turnover ratio or just more assists, period. But for a guy like Keontae, he definitely can score. He's definitely very aggressive. A little bit smaller than the other two guys. But at the same time, he plays so aggressively that you don't really notice it as much. And yeah, just a guy who I think his future in the league is probably more as a two guard, rather than as a point guard. But also at the same time, for a guy who can create for his own on the perimeter, which is something, a trait that I think probably all three of these guys share. But I think currently right now, skill set wise, I think Keontae's probably the best between the three of those. This is my personal opinion. I do think that there is that need that can be filled on the Raptors. My question with him, with Keontae Moore, is sort of just like, what are the other skill sets are you bringing, right? Are you also coming in and being a really great defender in your position? Can you also play make? If you're a guy who can really get your shot off, can you play make? Otherwise, you're kind of limited as a six-man type, right? One of those combo guards off the bench. But yeah, I mean, I think these are all pretty good options. Not even included in some of this, the Raptors have the chance probably to take an off-ball shooter as well, and we'll see if Grady Dick drops out of the top 10. He's definitely a very established shooter. Guys like Jordan Hawkins, like there's other shooters that are in this draft too. But for me, I would personally look to get a ball handler who can also shoot a little bit.
Yeah, so if you're sitting in that war room, Bobby Webster, fresh off a nice meal at Patois, last night.
That's confirmed?
Confirmed on Instagram. Seeking your opinion out of these guys. Like who's the guy that you would want?
I mean, but between all three of these guys, Kobe's probably been my pick.
Okay.
I just think he has probably the best mix of skills. And between these three, I would probably take Keontae second and Hood Schifino third. But again, these guys have been tracking all these prospects for quite a long time. And I'm sure they've watched a lot more tape than I have, which is mostly YouTube videos online, if we're going to be completely honest about it.